Hi, I'm Trey Bowles, and this is CEO Insider, a monthly piece with DallasInnovates.com, where we come and get to interview one emerging CEO from a company in North Texas. We're going to get to talk to the CEO, learn a little bit about their business, how they got started, some of the mistakes they've made, some of the things they've learned, and any advice they have to give out. We're here at Paperlight Studio in Oak Cliff, and happy to have our first guest, Glen from Switch Creative and Good Work.
Thanks so much for having me.
We've got a set of different questions we're going to be going through and asking you, and really just kind of understand in an informal way what it is that makes Switch and Good Work happen. So the first question I'd have to ask you is, what was it that convinced you that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I don't know. It's one of those things. I grew up and I felt a little bit kind of wired for it. I was the kid that was kind of gung-ho for lemonade stands and things like that. There was even a point where my parents laugh about it, where I took a bunch of rocks that were sort of smooth, and on a magic marker, I colored them and like made things like, you know, blue pills and pickles and things like that, and sold them as paperweights. Like, people wanted paperweights.
It was the pet rock, right?
Yeah.
Before it went big.
Yeah, and then the entrepreneur thing kind of fell in my lap when it came to my family's business kind of like winding down and having an opportunity to sort of take it in a different direction. And so, I don't know, I've always been a little risk tolerant, and so, yeah.
So, I mean, it kind of leads into the next question, but do you believe entrepreneurs are born, or can they be made?
I think probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think that sort of DNA around entrepreneurship and risk tolerance, and kind of the idea of putting a little risk against something and finding the right relationships to do something is maybe a DNA thing. But I think there's also something to the fact that, like, if you grow up, or if you've kind of grown up in a scenario where you need to be resourceful, you know, like you need to kind of figure stuff out, I think that entrepreneurship can be sort of conditioned in that way. Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably a little bit of a hybrid. You got an appetite for it, but also I think that there's something to the idea of figuring stuff out over time.
So Switch is about how old?
So Switch has been around since 2004.
All right. Why did you decide to go into branding? I mean, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, why did you pick that particular vertical or niche to get into?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. My background had sort of a general sort of background in marketing, studied it in college. But I think that, like, the appetite for design and creativity was, and this is kind of cliche because I think everybody that gets into the advertising or marketing space is kind of sort of into the creative side of it. But, you know, I was always kind of aligned with it. And I in high school, I was, you know, slinging T-shirts and things like that. Did the same thing in college to make money. Just the idea of design and branding kind of being something that sort of triggered emotion, and emotion triggered commerce, or, you know, a celebration, or donations, or whatever it is. I've always loved that, and so I think that was always sort of embedded in me, and I've always sort of deconstructed sort of brands and advertisements and things like that. Even when I was like in middle school and stuff, I was just always like, that's interesting, like how that company or that brand or that product is being positioned in this way, and that's what I notice in the world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so give us a little bit of an overview. If you have to describe Switch Creative and Good Work to somebody, what do you tell them that you guys do? Yeah, so Switch in the landscape of marketing is a design firm and specifically a branding firm. So our goal is to work with clients that either need ground up brand builds or a rebrand of some kind. They're either, you know, maybe they're at a crossroads or something, and they need to sort of refocus on that. And then we endeavor to build brands that are strategic as well as beautiful. So the branding side of it is informed by a process that includes research and a lot of writing, a lot of tone and voice and personality, and then it nets out a design system, and ultimately we extend those brands and even manage those brands ongoing, hopefully. So that's what we do. The Good Work side of it is our sort of commitment to the digital landscape. And so we are building marketing websites or building web-related products for companies that are sort of rooted more in digital needs or have a digital agenda. So we have an arm of our business called Good Work, but they're really a separate entity that we're a partner in. So.
And talk to me a little about, in the world of entrepreneurship, we always talk about, do you have a co-founder? Do you not have a co-founder?
Yeah.
How do you pick the right co-founder?
Right.
Tell me about how you and your co-founder came together and why your partnership has continued to work.
Yeah, so I have two business partners. Our creative director, Justin Childress, he is a great partner that we've brought along over time, but Kimmy and I are the two managing partners. So Kimmy has always been sort of the creative side. She actually is maybe more the business head than I am. She handles more of our operations, but Kimmy and I was running a business called Narrowcasting, which was the sort of the legacy brand that my family ran. I sort of like decommissioned my family's company and sort of rebooted it, but with the same name and brand, and kind of came to market with a small business marketing consultancy. And so more or less what that means is I was just sort of faking it till I made it and like helping businesses out, trying to just roll out their marketing ideas or their brand builds, or I was kind of touching on a lot of different needs. But what happened was one time, so I had a staff of about 4 or 5, and we were sort of overtaxed or overburdened as far as creative resources, and I was seeking relationships to kind of help that out. And I had a chance meeting with this guy named Matt Dahlman, who is actually the pit guy over at 18th and Vine, and who started that whole brand and that whole experience. And anyway, he and I had kept in touch from college, and we just met in a situation where at a happy hour or something, and he was like, "Hey, you should talk to my wife. Like, well, she has a little design firm." And I was like, "Well, I need that, So Kimmy and I met, and I learned all about what she was doing, and it just became one of those divine things where things snowballed, and my needs were really rooted in design and heavy, kind of good conceptual stuff, and she was delivering, and we just kind of got to talking, and she was very forthright in her needs as far as her business, and we were just sort of like this good match, and we've continued to be so, and we'll have been merged up for almost 10 years. We'll be in 10 years in, I think, November or so.
That's a huge win to have a partnership for that long.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I kind of stubbed my toe. I've kind of whiffed on that idea before, and learned a ton. But I personally always like having a partner.
So what you do at Switch, whether it's design, branding, it's becoming commoditized. There's so many groups that do that. So what is your differentiator? How do you stand out and make Switch, different, unique from anything else out there?
Right. Good question. And it's something that I think it becomes more of like this sort of things that lives in your soul that you want to continue to make glow so that you can project that and then communicate that and then live that. But we are focused on branding, so that was one of the things. We wanted to be focused on the idea of supporting businesses that needed a new narrative, and their narrative is rooted in strategy, and that strategy is informed by a process, and it's very collaborative, so that there's checkpoints and everything along the way, and it's not just like, hey, let's meet and high five, and we're going to jam on some logos for you, but rather there's actually a few steps before that that sort of inform everything and inform things like cornerstones and brand narratives and voice and personality and tone. And so we really like to stroke all those things to make sure that the outcomes are comprehensive. That's kind of one of the things that we sort of take pride in is the strategic focus. I think on the other side of it is the interactive piece, is that we feel like brands, have to, in today's environment, live in a digital landscape that's relevant, that's not tired, and that's forward-thinking as far as design is concerned, and development for that matter. So, we're anchored by the idea of conceptual design, strategic, beautiful, but not for the sake of prettiness, but for the sake of effectiveness, And then, of course, being able to translate that into all sort of brand extension, opportunities. But the digital landscape and our Good Work partnership gives us tons of flexibility and tons of scale for that. And then I think the last piece of it is we're rooted in this sort of philosophy of preservation of specialty. So we're all about staying in our lanes, whether it's working with the right video production partner like Paperlight, or working with an event production person or a PR person. We just don't do that. We're very overt in communicating that we don't do that, but we need those people to either be a value add or to be an anchor partner for these brand builds and brand extensions. So we are always fostering and building and investing in those relationships, and so that is my best answer. The secret sauce isn't super secret, but it's something we try to live.
I like it. It's consistent. It's focused.
Yeah.
You know what you're good at. The other things you do, you bring in great partners.
Right.
I think that separates a lot of business, because so many entrepreneurs are constantly chasing revenue.
Right.
Oh, somebody wants to pay me for this. Somebody wants to pay me for that. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to do it, versus saying, look, I'm just going to be disciplined.
Right.
I'm going to be persistent and focused.
Yep.
And then we're going to develop a brand for ourselves.
Yeah, and Kimmy and I, when we, and this is a huge testament to my partner. I mean, when we originally started, I was a small business marketing consultancy, and I was living that archetype. I was just chasing gigs and trying to solve problems, and it was a little unfocused. And while I think I worked hard enough to sort of overcome a lot of things and make some of those clients happy, Kimmy was like, no, we're going to be a branding firm, and this is what we're going to do. And we've learned a lot in that journey too, but we've always maintained that, and it's served us well, So
you guys have a great team. We get to work with you guys day to day, and have been a client ourselves at the deck. But talk to me about how you think about culture, how you build culture, how you take the concept of the strategic branding, all the elements that you're helping your clients do, turning that internally and building an environment where people want to be there and work there and feel happy and content in the culture you've created. What is your philosophy on culture?
Culture is a really big deal at Switch. I think that one of the things that sets us up pretty well to kind of balance the commerce versus culture kind of tension, right? It's like, as a business leader, we're focused on the bottom line. We want to make a buck and things like that. But one of the things that's kind of unique about Switch, or maybe firms like ours, we're sort of project focused, right? So there's really no client engagement that won't expire. We have to continue to reinvest in our people. We want to try to build a culture, I should probably say, that is focused on communication, transparency, and grace. That's probably 3 words that we throw around the office a lot when it comes to sort of mission, purpose, values type stuff. And I think that having kind of a communication anchored culture allows everybody to be stakeholders in a lot of conversations, and really, try to be communicative of where the business is going. If we're thinking about new lines of business, new client opportunities, new office space, new infrastructure stuff, we just try to make sure everybody feels involved. We want to make sure that they always know we have their back.
You mentioned this earlier, the idea of being transparent, authentic, things like that with your employees. I also like entrepreneurs who will do that with me and say, look, looking back on building my business, I made some huge mistakes, and here's what they were. And I lucked in and made some good decisions, or just got lucky and accidentally made the right decision, or I was strategically intentional about a decision. But for you, talk a little bit about some mistakes that you made in building your business that you would not do again if you launched another business.
Stay focused on your expenses so that you can kind of work on sort of covering your net and making sure that you can make a profit. Try to focus in early on that sort of delta of making profit, and as it relates to engagements, and not just chasing everything. Because that's, I think, where a lot of businesses struggle is. And so you want to focus on kind of trying to figure out this perfect engagements, this perfect opportunities, or that perfect price point for a product or something like that. I would say that making that kind of a primary focus would be something that's, we have worked hard at and continue to work at.
So on the other side of that, what is one thing you would absolutely do again? Like, anytime I build a company for as long as I live, or anybody I talk to, the one thing I would tell them, make sure you do this.
Yeah.
What would that be?
I would say try to lock in a mentor. I think mentors, if you're starting a business, are so invaluable, and to try to make sure that if you've got an idea that you want to foster, that you can try to build a relationship or two, and maybe 2, because you never know kind of where the wind's going to blow with a certain relationship. But someone that you can run ideas past, that is maybe outside the world, but that has experience.
So talking specifically about being, an owner of a business, a leader of a business, what are the three most important characteristics that you think that you need to be successful, or that a CEO or entrepreneur needs to be successful?
I think you got to be resourceful. I think that figuring stuff out, trying to build relationships that sort of further an agenda to try to be faced with an obstacle and just immediately be sort of wired for that workaround, I think is good. I think you got to be flexible. I think the landscape of business and life in general can be harsh, and you've got to be just okay with that and be sort of nimble enough to sort of pivot and realize that maybe one opportunity needs to be sort of retired or reprioritized. And I think you need to be focused. I think focus leads to determination. I think you try to root into a strategy for your business that's rooted in goals, tactics, things like that, and be focused on trying to deliver those. Just keeping those kind of North Stars in your landscape, in your periphery, and making sure that you stay focused on doing that stuff. And I think that's probably it.
So resourceful, flexible, focused.
Yeah.
I like that. That's great. You recently partnered with a company called Good Work, which is a development firm. What was it about that relationship that you thought was going to be really important for you in marrying the branding and design stuff that you're doing with the development component?
It's really exciting. So Good Work, Switch is an equity partner in Good Work. It's a separate entity, separate business, but I refer to us in a lot of prospective client conversations as Siamese twins. We kind of have different brains, and we're operating a little bit differently, but we share some internal organs, as far as infrastructure and things like that. And Good Work is a development shop. So they are supporting agencies like Switch and with really strong interactive solutions. Switch has always been focused on the interactive landscape and how brands translate in the digital world. We are super focused on websites and what they can mean as far as delivering content to the world, to tell stories, to tell these narratives, right? So we have Switch has employed since 2004 a web development team. But just attrition, turnover, things like that, and then the landscape of developers and the idea of recruiting that talent has always been tough. So one day we were at a crossroads and we needed development support, and Good Work came along. They were seeking partner relationships, and I immediately knew that they were focused on being able to deliver kind of comprehensive needs, but they're also focused on supporting design-focused agencies. Mm-hmm. And that's what we are. And then we had this alignment of technologies and platforms, and it was just a match made in heaven. So we quickly mobilized a conversation around partnership, things like that. And again, it's kind of like Kimmy and I's conversation about having what each other need. We had some resources that were really helpful to the Good Work kind of agenda. So that's what we've done. And they are awesome. They have scale. We've got resources in the United States, and we've also got an awesome team in the UK. They can build websites, web products, iOS products, things like that, and we've flexed all of that. And so it's been really good, and again, it's given us the confidence to really just dream as big as we want in the technology realm, but also and delight in the fact that there's actually a whole other revenue thing happening with them, and it's being managed by just an amazing guy, and it has an awesome team. So,
well, one of the things that really attracted me to what you guys are doing is this new product that you guys have released with Good Work called Hatch.
Yep.
We sort of jokingly refer to it as website as a service.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what that is and how it works, because I think for a lot of people it meets them where they are from a budgetary perspective, but also from a strategic perspective as well.
Yeah. So that's a great point, and that's another sort of like feather in the cap of Good Work, because we're not only, just building web stuff or web sites and things like that for agencies in the agency landscape, but we also get to kind of dream up and build products that we feel like serve needs out there, and we've got this sort of education registration product called Roster, and then there's this one that's kind of getting going with a little bit of traction now called Hatch. And so Hatch is, it's basically the opportunity for a small business to get a design-focused and a content-focused website. So what that means is you get the benefit of sort of like a curated website that's sort of built around the needs of communicating the messages that you might have as a business. But then it so it's like kind of custom homepage, and then sort of just the right amount of flexibility and sort of some interior templates. And then you can engage in a way where you're paying on a monthly basis through a structure that feels right. But it's really, again, for a small business, a very affordable, a very approachable thing, especially for people that want an alternative to things like Squarespace and Wix and stuff like that, because it's just a little bit more intentional about those messages, So we feel like it's serving a hole in the market. It's getting some traction out there, and so we're excited about it.
And Dallas Innovates actually did a story on Hatch.
Oh yeah,
and the Good Work team. So if you go online, you can find that there.
Yeah, cool. That's good.
On a little bit of a lighter note, you have a weird fascination with KU basketball.
Right.
And I've been around you when KU wins, and I've been around you when KU loses.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got their wormhole, I guess. And KU basketball is my wormhole. I will say that, like, as far as KU basketball, sort of unpacking some great sort of business blessings on Switch. I mean, I was watching a KU basketball game or some sort of KU-related happy hour when I ran into Matt Dahlman. Matt Dahlman is married to Kimmy Dahlman. Kimmy is my business partner, and we're talking to Trey. No, so
Jayhawks just bring everybody together.
But no, it's a good. I mean, and it's fun to have the fellowship of something, and the fellowship of basketball is in my.
Important for entrepreneurs to have some sort of hobby, something outside of work that you could focus on and get excited about. And so I think that's great for you. Another sort of lighter side question would be, if your business had a theme song,
right?
What would that theme song be?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's funny, like when we had our, so at the office, which you remember our old office, great
House office.
Yeah. It's a great spot. So we had this hold music. I was like, oh my gosh, what's our hold music gonna be? Like, we can pick anything. And it just paralyzed us all, and we couldn't get anything. I don't know, so here's where I'm gonna land on this one. I think, you ever heard of They Might Be Giants?
Sure.
So Birdhouse in Your Soul. I think it really strikes the right sort of delta of, it's kind of weird, it's a little irreverent, but it kind of, like Switch, like our goal is to sort of evoke an emotion. And it has a great crescendo. It kind of takes you down, takes you up. And so,
the story.
Yeah, it's warm fuzzies, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's the Birdhouse in Your Soul. It's the brand behind it all.
So what's one book, magazine, podcast, something like that you really recommend to aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs? Like, look, check this out. This is really great.
I know. So I think the Ringer Podcast Network sort of satisfies a lot of that. This genius guy named Bill Simmons, he is probably the mentor that I've never met, but I'm really sort of fascinated by how he created sort of a media property that focuses around food, lifestyle, entertainment, pop culture, business, technology, politics. It's great. And so I subscribe to several of those podcasts on that network. And yeah, there's several other ones that I'll do a dive in. I'm a Guy Raz and PR guy, and I like, off camera and stuff like that. But the Ringer is probably where, if I had one set of headphones and one podcast.
That's what you would do. At Switch, you guys have created this really cool music concert series over the last several years. Talk a little bit about what that is, why you do it, how you benefit nonprofits from it. I think it's good to have entrepreneurs think about how they give back and what they do, and you guys have come up with a really creative way to do that through the concert series. Right.
The Switch concert series has become this living and breathing, very sort of sustained thing that we're delighted by. It started as this kind of sort of 11th hour, let's get a band to promote what was back then in 2009 when Kimmy and I merged our two companies. We had a party we called it The Wedding, and we had farm animals at it, and I don't know what we were trying to communicate. So we had all that, and then we had this band there, And it was a great party, and we were like, man, the band thing like turned out to be a real hit. We started having concerts, and it was supporting a lot of local singer-songwriters and musicians. And then every time we had a concert, we're like, okay, here's the deal. Hopefully we can do some good in the world, so we always partner with a nonprofit. And the ask for coming to the concert is, hey, will you chip in a few bucks for the nonprofit, raise awareness for the nonprofit, eat some barbecue, be entertained, and just sort of, exhale for a little bit.
That's great. What a great way to give back and also have fun and invite people into your world.
Yeah. We've got all kinds of sponsors, and at the end of the day, we want to do some good for some people and make sure that really we kind of take care of ourselves, like exhale a little bit, celebrate the victories, celebrate our partner, celebrate everything. So
I think it's a good one, celebrating the victories, even the inflection points as you're growing a business to keep you going, because it's such a roller coaster ride that you're on a lot of the time. To being able to celebrate, your first client or your first check or your sixth employee or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all those milestones. You got to eat them up.
Embrace them.
Yeah.
So my last question for you is, if you had to give one piece of advice to a fledgling or aspiring entrepreneur that was thinking about getting into this space, thinking about starting their own company, thinking about following their dreams,
right?
What would it be?
Well, we'll celebrate the victories, right? So
that's a good one.
Enjoy that first client, enjoy that first sort of hire, celebrate all that revenue, milestones. I think, as an entrepreneur, trust your instincts. I mean, that's why you're in it. You kind of saw a need in the world, or you're fueling a passion of some kind, and to lean into that. And then I would say seek help when you need it. Help from friends or from mentors or from other people in sort of the business community. That's huge. And celebrate those victories for sure.
Well, thank you for being our first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully it doesn't break the internet or anything.
So much traffic, right? So much traffic.
Yeah, something like that.
You can find stories like this and other stories at DallasInnovates.com. And thanks again to the Paperlight team and the Paperlight Studios for hosting us. And check out more on Glen Collins and the Switch Creative Good Work team.
Check it out.